The vibe here on the ground, Steph, is that you look at the polling data, you look at the trends. It's clear that Nikki Haley has a tough hill to climb here. She's more than aware of that. And I actually spoke with her one-on-one today where I asked her, how do you argue that coming in second out of now a two-person race is anything but a loss? Haley, of course, dodged that question, saying what she said over and over again, which is that she just wants to do better in New Hampshire than she did in Iowa and better going down the stretch than she has in New Hampshire. So she wants to keep that upward trend going. But the question is, to what end? Because if you can't win a state, it's hard to argue you'll win the nomination. And if Haley can't win here, where the coalition of voters that she's trying to build, some mix of independents, undeclared, and of course Republicans who want another alternative to Trump, if she can't do it here, I have a hard time figuring out where she's going to do it. And of course, she's not able to name that state. That, of course, is something we're keeping an eye on. But as I've been talking to voters, the thing they keep telling me is that if they're at a Haley event, if they are looking for another alternative to Trump, in large part, the reason they give me is they want to get away from the chaos. Many of them actually cite January 6th as the point where they felt they were breaking with the former president, not because they thought it was his fault, but because they think that it was unpresidential of him to not do more to at least quell what was happening there in his name. I do think that that might be surprising for some of our viewers to hear that Republicans are having that reaction on the ground. It's just maybe not the majority of them that you would need in order to actually get rid of Trump. Now the question is who Nikki Haley can actually pull and if that's replicable down the pike and as we go down this calendar.
And that's sort of the big question, Vaughn. So New Hampshire is kind of like Nikki Haley's ideal demo. So what does winning there look like for her?
For Nikki Haley, a win would be a narrow win. I mean, if she is able to pull off a win, that's enough to justify her continuing on, despite when you look forward to her home state of South Carolina a month from now voting. Right now, polls show her at a deficit of about 30 points here. And you said it, New Hampshire has the best demographics, along with allowing independents to actually take part in the primary and vote tomorrow. We could expect upwards of 45% of the GOP electorate tomorrow being unaffiliated voters. But that's where, you know, for Nikki Haley, she's very much on her own island here at this point. There is not a cavalry of anti-Trump surrogates coming here on her behalf or folks that are making the case for her around the state of New Hampshire that Nikki Haley is the future of the Republican Party. Instead, tonight on stage back in Laconia, where we just took off from, where Donald Trump held his primary eve final rally, he was joined on stage by former Republican presidential rivals Doug Burgum, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott, all four of them appearing on the stage at the same time. In the words of one campaign senior advisor to Trump, calling them the MAGA Avengers. And for Donald Trump, you know, he joked, if you will, to the crowd that he didn't like these candidates, particularly Ramaswamy, when they were campaigning against him. But he said, once you win, it's quite easy to like somebody. And so for Donald Trump here, right now, where did the cavalry go? It went to him. It coalesced around him, not the Trump alternative in the year of 2024.
James, Nikki Haley has finally gotten her wish. It's person against person, her against Donald Trump, and now she's finally going after him, but it is still not the Chris Christie hit him between the eyes caliber. Is it too late for her to take on Trump? She's had a lot of time to do so, and now here we are, literally at the 11th hour.
That's right. It's both too late or it's just the beginning of the process. And and I'm not trying to be flippant about that. I mean, look, no one drops out of these presidential races because they lost a state. They drop out because there's no path and they're broke. And so no matter what happens tomorrow, and look, New Hampshire can surprise. Hillary Clinton was also down double digits, not by these double digits we're seeing now, but she was down double digits heading into primary day in 2008 against Barack Obama. And suddenly, shockingly, she pulled off a win. It's not impossible to imagine that. You can kind of squint and see how she would win. But look, if she wouldn't have a sustained campaign against Donald Trump, that needed to start a long time ago. She had a sustained campaign in Iowa, by the way, against Ron DeSantis. And she's only now making this pivot in this final weekend without any major moments. Her final rally was like 34 minutes long. That is not how it's done in New Hampshire for an underdog.
Dave, you know as well as everyone else on this panel, behind closed doors, there are countless GOP lawmakers who cannot stand Donald Trump. But in the last 24 hours, they are coming out of the woodwork to endorse him. Are they just looking at Trump's polling numbers and saying, I don't know, let's give the Republican people what they want, more Trump?
They're looking at those numbers. They're looking at their political futures. I think one interesting story in New Hampshire this week is that Kelly Ayotte, who's a front runner in the Republican race for governor, has been very absent at a moment when there are many, many reporters who might like to talk to Republican politicians. Chuck Morse, who's running against her for governor, goes up at Trump rallies, talks to voters. There is acknowledgement here that the base of the party, and that includes a lot of these independents who don't register as Republicans but vote for Republicans, that they like Donald Trump. And you saw this in the final wave of polling that we've been discussing. If you look into the crosstabs, on every issue, the likely electorate likes Donald Trump, trusts him more on issues, on immigration, on national security, on abortion, an issue that both Haley and Trump pretty much dodged for the entire campaign. This is the wall that Haley's running up against. This isn't a race like 2016 where Hillary Clinton had problems with the Democratic electorate. Donald Trump has solved his problem with the electorate, and Republicans endorsing him, like the ones you saw on stage, have created this permission structure saying, yes, he made mistakes. Even Haley sometimes talks about chaos in a very passive tone. Chaos has followed Donald Trump. He's made some mistakes, but look at his record. And the entire party's really gone along, with the exception of some never-Trumpers, gone along with the idea that things were good for 3.2 years, the presidency, give him a mulligan on COVID. Why would you replace him with somebody who doesn't have that record? That has been, in my conversation with Republican voters, pretty unanimous. In my conversations with independent voters, they've not been given many reasons to cross over and support a very conservative Republican who, according to Donald Trump's ads, wants to cut their Social Security.
Vaughn, is that why GOP lawmakers are siding with him, or is at least some of it out of fear, right? Trump has made it clear this election is about revengeance. And if they do not want him coming after them and their positions, then they might want to side with him. Or the reverse, they see that Trump loyalists, they get hooked up if he wins. That's a reason he knows Nikki Haley. He made her his UN ambassador.
Right. He said just tonight on the stage that he sees Burgum, Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott playing important key roles in his administration over the next 4 years. I mean, there you have it. If you get in line, you've got, you got prospects for a future. Politics is a tough business. A job is not guaranteed unless the voters give it to you, or unless you attach yourself to the coattails of somebody who does have a big job, like President of the United States. And look, I went around the country last year covering the revenge tour, if you will, for Donald Trump, in which he rallied up the MAGA base of support in congressional districts around the country to effectively take out folks like Congressman Tom Rice in South Carolina, who voted to impeach him, Liz Cheney. There were 8 of the 10 that voted to impeach him after the January 6th attack were effectively ousted from Congress and the Republican Party. And so this is, for Donald Trump, it works. His backed candidates in key primaries, from Kari Lake to Doug Mastriano to Tudor Dixon in Michigan, they all won their races last year in the primaries. And this go around, he is proving yet again that the MAGA base of support among Republican voters is so critical. I talked to Marjorie Taylor Greene tonight, who was at that closing rally for Donald Trump. And I asked her, what would a major win here in New Hampshire say? And she said it would be a clear message that not only do Republican voters around the country want Donald Trump's policies, but they want Donald Trump to be the one to implement those policies.
And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene would say that. She has given her loyalty pledge to Donald Trump, and thus far, it has worked for her. Ali, let's talk about DeSantis, though, right? A week ago, when Trump won in Iowa, we said, well, if it was only a 2-person race, maybe things would be wildly different. DeSantis and Haley are splitting the other vote. What about now? Did leaving the race help Haley?
I mean, they weren't really splitting the vote here, though, because DeSantis wasn't doing well here. Even when I talked to Haley folks and allies in the immediate aftermath of him dropping out, they were like, well, we're only talking about 5 or 6% at best here in New Hampshire for Ron DeSantis. Say that splits 2-1 according to our polling data. Fine, Trump does benefit, but it's not like Haley gets nothing. The dropout that was actually probably more significant for her in the Granite State was Chris Christie's, because he was polling higher here and because he was attracting voters that were more likely to go to Haley, although, again, it's not like we're talking clean slates here. I do think the other side of the coin, though, for what you're talking about with Vaughn, applies to DeSantis. It applied to Mike Pence. It certainly applies to Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, all of these folks. Yes, you get elevated in a Trump world, a Trump administration, if you back him. But one, loyalty only goes both ways. You might get a big job, but it doesn't help you get to your next thing. And that big job might also lead you to needing a lawyer at the back end of this. How many people do we know that we covered during the Trump years and the Trump administration who are now spending a lot of their time in the courtroom? This is something that Republicans privately say to me all the time. They operate based on fear. They operate based on fundraising needs. That's why they hew so closely to him. And frankly, that's an explanation that I've heard for a lot of these recent endorsements. They're thinking about their political future. Certainly that was an explanation for Ron DeSantis's quick drop and endorse move, trying to save some face in Florida, maybe save some face for 2028 as well. That's going to be a calculation Nikki Haley has to make, too. But look, in theory, serving in an administration that remains popular among Republicans should have been something that allowed Nikki Haley and Mike Pence to really shotgun themselves to the top of this pack. Yeah, Nikki Haley's still here, but Mike Pence barely gained any traction. I do think that it's a reminder of what these lawmakers and other Republicans tell me privately, which is that you have to stick with him, but loyalty only goes one way, and it's not always a good thing when you come out the other side.